Hello, all, and welcome into another edition of What's the Word? My name is Carl McManus.
And I'm Brandon Hughley.
Today is Monday, June 8th, 2020, and the word comes from Joel 2:12 out of the Amplified Version. Even now, says the Lord, turn and come to me with all your heart and genuine repentance, with fasting and weeping and mourning, until every barrier is removed and the broken fellowship is restored. Thought that was a pretty powerful word today, considering everything that's still going on in the world. So there you go.
Definitely.
I have something new for you all today. It's a segment on this date. So we're gonna start with yesterday, actually, June 7th. June 7th, 1978, the Washington Bullets defeated the Seattle Supersonics in Game 7 of the NBA Finals to win the franchise's first and only NBA title. Also on yesterday's date, in 2018, the Washington Capitals defeated the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 5 to clinch their one and only Stanley Cup championship. So, interesting date. That is DC Sports Day, in case any of you were wondering. And today, June 8th, 2010, Steven Strasburg, reigning World Series MVP, made his MLB debut and struck out 14 Pittsburgh Pirates. That's pretty cool.
Yikes.
Also in 1976, I want to say, Maryland alumni John Lucas was drafted number 1 overall by the Houston Rockets. Yep.
Didn't know that.
Forgot about yesterday. Yesterday was Georgetown legend Allen Iverson's 45th birthday. Happy birthday to the answer.
Sir, one of the best.
Yep, one of my favorite players, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So the first topic on the docket today is the NBA's return to play plan. That is a tongue twister. The plan includes 22 teams, which accounts for all teams currently holding a playoff spot, as well as all teams within 6 games of the 8th seed in their conference. That's 13 teams in the Western Conference: the Lakers, Clippers, Denver, Utah, Oklahoma City, Houston, Dallas, Memphis, Portland, New Orleans, Sacramento, San Antonio, and Phoenix. And 9 teams in the Eastern Conference, that being Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, Miami, Indiana, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Orlando, and Washington. All those teams are in order of the standings currently. The playoffs will be determined by 8 regular season games to finalize seeding, with a 2-game play-in if the 9 seed is within 4 games at the time of the playoffs. In that scenario, the 9 seed would have to win both of the 2 games in order to override the 8th seed. All right, so what do you think about the setup?
I think it's interesting. I think that it's something definitely different. It almost has kind of like a March Madness almost feel to it. But I think that there are some teams that have been put in for viewership. I think that the NBA definitely wanted to find a way to get Zion possibly in the.
I thought you were going to start off with the Wizards. I thought you were going to say, people just wanted to see Brad averaging his 30 points.
Oh, 30 points again.
Yeah.
I think that they wanted to, teams like Orlando. I don't really.
Well, Orlando's the 8th seed, so they would have made it in.
They would have made it in, but in terms of viewership, more people, you got to think about fans across the states. You probably have more Wizards fans than you do Orlando fans, so those games would probably be lower in viewership rather than a Milwaukee and Washington series. I mean, the best player on this Orlando Magic team would probably be Nikola Vucevic, and I mean, what he's probably Nicola's probably what 29, almost 30.
I still think they have some watchable players. I'm a fan of Markelle Fultz coming into his own over there.
Yeah.
I really like Aaron Gordon, athletic big, can knock down the three. Great
True.
dunker, tremendous dunker. So they have highlight players on that team.
But they don't have star power on that team.
Very factual, very
Which
factual.
is there's a difference between a Markelle Fultz who's still coming into his own, like you said, but we have Bradley Beal who is already a superstar in this league. So I mean, I think that it's it's interesting to see. There are some surprises. I didn't really think Phoenix would be a team that they would be pushing to get into the playoffs, but I mean, to each his own. But it is something I'm really looking forward to, and I'm just really excited that we're getting basketball back.
As am I. Back to your comment about Phoenix, I think one reason they were included, other than being 6 games within, which was the breaking point for allowing teams to enter.
Mm-hmm.
They have Devin Booker, who's
Yep.
obviously a star, very interesting to watch. I don't know if Kelly Oubre is healthy. I know he injured himself right before the season was winding down back in March. So it'll be interesting to see if he plays.
Definitely.
But I wanted to get your take. And here it is. I thought it didn't save. I wrote down a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
Whose seeding do you think this affects the most? As in, like, who does this benefit most, or who loses the most from this?
Who does this help the most? Or who does this affect the most? Well, I definitely think it helps, your higher, wow. So I think your teams like the Lakers, your teams like the Clippers, Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston. I think that it definitely helps those teams out, because they do get a little bit of extra rest, and to be able to play teams that wouldn't have originally made the playoffs, if they do somehow make it into the playoffs, I think will be helpful. If Washington finds a way to sneak into the playoffs and they ultimately end up playing Milwaukee, I think that'll be a kind of a mental thing for Milwaukee. Oh well, this team, just barely made the playoffs. If we were going into the playoffs now, they wouldn't have made it. So I think it's it gives them kind of a mental edge, but I think it also kind of helps the teams that are playing in. So your teams like New Orleans and Portland and Sacramento and the Wizards again. Because now these teams have the possibility to come back and do something unprecedented in a season, in a year where this possibly will be the only time that they ever do something like this. So I think it benefits and it helps out a lot of different teams. I think the teams that lose the most are the ones that are at the bottom of the totem pole, like your Orlandos and your Memphis, because those teams have everything to lose but really nothing to gain. It's just gonna be an interesting thing to watch. What do you think?
I hear you and respect that. So the teams that are locked into playoff positions right now in the West are the Lakers, Clippers, Denver, Utah, Oklahoma City, and Houston. Dallas and Memphis have yet to clinch, so those are the two in the West that could possibly lose their spot in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And in the East, Brooklyn and Orlando are the only teams that haven't clinched a spot in the playoffs. So to answer my question, which you flip back on me, who gains the most? I think a team like the Pelicans, they weren't so good without Zion at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Healthy Zion came back. He started showing his monstrous rookie season and leaped them back into the playoff picture. So I think these 8 games could really show his star level. Also coupled with Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, I think that New Orleans is probably the team that benefits the most. And I'm going to actually go against what you said. I think the Wizards could possibly hurt the most from this. So, one thing I didn't mention is the 8 non-invite teams. So, the 8 teams that are not going to Orlando to finish this thing out are locked into their seeding for the lottery, meaning that they have the highest odds for the top 4 picks. The Wizards were just on the outside of that, being the 9th worst team in the NBA when everything was wrapping up. So they can only hurt their lottery chances. They can't help it. Even if they bottom out, even if they lose all 8 games, which unfortunately is possible, they can't help themselves. So I think Washington actually loses the most in this scenario. There's something else I wanted to mention. I'm mumbling, so you guys can't even hear me. But I put a link in here, so we're going to click that real quick. It's CBS Sports, and they talked about all of what we're talking about, so it could help us just a little bit as a reference point. Which one says open? That one says open.
Yeah. I was trying to see myself.
So here's the schedule, and man, I really thought this would look better because I can't hardly see it.
I can see this part.
We're going to scoot up a little bit, and I'm gonna make a ton of noise. I don't know if y'all heard that, but there goes my nephew.
Okay, so the Lakers, Rockets, Nuggets, Jazz, Raptors, Pacers, Trailblazers, Heat or Magic.
Are you looking at the Lakers schedule?
Yeah. Brooklyn actually, yeah, they're in for some trouble because I know you mentioned this to me before we started, but Kyrie Irving will not be returning.
Yeah,
Kyrie Irving
likely not coming back, and Kevin Durant has already confirmed from the beginning that he was not going to play this season. Same thing for Wizards fans. John Wall, as has been the plan all season long, will not be returning. I know I kind of got my hopes up for that, but yeah, I believe it's probably for the best. But taking a look at the Wizards schedule, they'll play the Celtics, Thunder, 76ers, Nets, Bucks, Celtics again, Suns, and finishing up with the Bucks again. So out of that, I think they could probably take one from the Celtics. That's
split.
Hopeful thinking. I think that they could give the Thunder a run for their money. So that's, let's say, 1.5 wins right there. Probably struggle against the 76ers with their size. They can probably beat the Nets if they're without Kyrie and KD, as they've already beaten the Nets a few times this season. I think they'll lose both games to the Bucks, and
the Suns.
I think we can beat the Suns. I think definitely. That's the pivot game right there. We can probably beat the Suns, but that's 3 wins?
Yeah.
So 3 and 5, which means Brooklyn, who is 6 games ahead of us at this point, 6.5 games ahead of us at this point.
They have a tough road.
They'd have to lose all their games, or 7 of their 8 games for the Wizards to force that play-in tournament against them.
I don't know. The Clippers twice, the Celtics, the Blazers, who's getting Yusuf Nurkic back.
Is he coming back?
Yeah, he said he's gonna come back and play. The Kings, who have been tough on a lot of teams this year. You have the Magic twice.
So one thing that could benefit us, the Wizards being, I'm a Wizards fan, is the fact that we play Brooklyn. So that head-to-head could mean a lot as far as us making it in.
Yeah.
Awkward silence. But speaking of Portland that we mentioned earlier, they are the one team out of 30 that voted against this format. thinking that there was more competitive options out there. So it will be interesting to see how they come out and play during this. You said they're getting Nurkic back, but it'll be interesting to see if that negatively affects their mindset going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
So moving on a little bit, some key dates. Actually, no, before we get to that, I wanted to say my picks for the NBA Finals. I think I would be most excited to see a Lakers versus Celtics NBA Finals. I believe the last time that happened was Kobe Bryant's final NBA championship, so it'll be a fitting season to see that happen again.
That would be an interesting series, and LeBron has had his struggles with that same Celtics team, aside from a few players.
Yeah, Jason Tatum likes to body LeBron, so that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, but Jason Tatum he's still a baby. But but I would definitely wouldn't mind seeing a series like that. But I would also really like to see, as everybody would like to see, a Lakers in Milwaukee. But my dark horse is, as every year, the Philadelphia 76ers. I would really like to see a Lakers and Sixers series.
We're going to see Joel Embiid crying again this postseason. It's not going to happen.
We will. It would just be really interesting to see a team like Philly, or even a young, scrappy team like Miami find their way. But I think this is the Lakers' year, regardless of who they play. So, yeah.
Another one I wanted to throw out there. I'm not entirely sure if they've said that it will be East versus West this year. So going based off possibly reseeding, it'd be interesting to see a Lakers Clippers NBA Finals. Not sure how possible that is, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah, for sure.
LeBron doesn't like playing against Kawhi, so that'd be a fun one.
I would challenge the world to bet on LeBron in a series. If it came down to the finals being the Lakers and the Clippers, please, everyone, bet against him I can put my money on him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going with that.
And we'll cash out, Carl, you and I.
We'd also get to see a finals between the Morris twins, so it'd be interesting to see if they got physical with each other. They tend to, even if their opponents, defend each other instead of their teammates, so that would be interesting, depending on how rough that series gets.
Yeah.
But some key dates for the NBA, July 31st will be the season restart. All the teams will have a chance to go through some sort of training camp once they get down to Orlando. The draft lottery would be August 25th, so I'm assuming all play-in games would be over by then. October 12th would be the latest date for Game 7 of the Finals, followed by the draft being October 15th. Free agency October 18th. The start of training camp for 2020-21 will be November 10th, and the next season will get underway December 1st. It's a quick turnaround. It's only about a month from October 12th to November 10th, the last date of the finals, until training camp. So it'll be interesting to see that quick of a turnaround in the league.
Yeah. I mean, to think that the draft would be happening 3 days after the finals is pretty insane, given that we typically have a fairly decent amount of time between the finals and the draft lottery, and then from the draft lottery to the draft. So like we were saying on Saturday, this could impact a lot of, sleeper picks and things like that. So a lot of teams will probably be able to find a lot of hidden gems, because we don't even know with the social distancing how these workouts are going to go.
That is a very quick turnaround. 3 days from the end of the finals until the draft. So I'm not sure how much that affects pre-draft workouts, scouting, interviewing. Not sure how all that will be affected. To me, it seems like it will be impacted majorly.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. Like, is there tampering? Can you talk to players while the league is still going on? So that'd be definitely interesting to see.
Especially with them saying that the players will pretty much be in a bubble in Orlando, and with key executives being there as well. How does that, are they going to be in Orlando?
Good point there.
Are they going to be, meeting at, or are they going to be meeting at these specific facilities? I'm really interested to see about that. And then even to have free agency 3 days after the draft, again, just unprecedented.
It'll definitely have a different look. I'm actually excited about 3 days between the draft and free agency, just to see how rosters take shape that quickly.
Right.
I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that. I like my 2K roster updated from the community. I hop on it immediately, and I'm playing for the next season already. Any other points you want to make about the NBA before we switch topics?
No, I think, it's just kind of time to let it all start taking shape. We got about a month, a little over a month. So I'm just ready for football, for basketball, I mean.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned football, that's actually our next topic. So a few controversial quotes took place this past week. And we'll start with Drew MAGA Brees. All right, let me not get ahead of myself. So the New Orleans Saints quarterback, when asked about how he feels, what he thinks about kneeling as a form of protest, his response was, "I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country." Drew. I'm going to steal one from Jada Pinkett Smith. Not Drew. When I saw that, I thought, not Drew.
This is the kind of tone-deaf behavior that we have been fighting against for how long and continue to fight against?
Centuries, since we were brought over here in 1619.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how many times it has been explained, but I guess we'll do it again. Colin Kaepernick was not protesting against the military. He was not protesting against the United States. What he is protesting against is the systemic racism in America and police brutality. I don't know why I don't really want to call out a whole race of people, but I don't know why he and a lot of others in this community cannot get it through their head that Colin Kaepernick nor anybody else who took a knee was kneeling against any of the veterans who fought for this country. And I think frankly it's disgusting to even imagine him saying something like this when there were plenty of black people who went through the same thing and were not even welcomed back.
I was just about to get to that. Drew happened to mention that his grandfather served in World War II, and when he looks at the flag, he thinks of unity and he thinks of respecting individuals that were in the military. That's all well and good. Right. I'll give him credit for that. That's his form of patriotism. But what about our grandfathers, and not mine specifically? Actually, yeah, my grandfather fought in Vietnam. But what about our fathers and our ancestors that went to war for this country, came back, and weren't treated with the human decency? I saw something on Twitter earlier about an African American male who went to war and returned back to South Carolina. The day he returned, he was attacked and rendered blind while wearing his uniform. So you can't say that they didn't know about what he had done for our country. Came back wearing his uniform and was rendered blind in an attack. So, what about our ancestors who went to war and fought for this country and came back to the same issues that they had before they left? What about them?
Exactly.
And I also want to point out the fact that during Colin Kaepernick's protest and how it spanned throughout the league, Drew Brees was one of the players who, with the Saints, took a knee. Was he disrespecting the flag then? I don't understand. But I think I've said all I want to on his quote. So now we'll get to his apology. He did apologize, but I still think there was a lack of not sincerity. I think he was sincere, but there was still a lack of understanding. So his apology. Actually, I want to preface this by saying, any quotes you take, you can do anything with them. You can make it. You can take any select quotes and still make it seem. All right, what am I trying to say?
Change the narrative.
Yeah, you can take. Thank you. See, this is why I love having somebody to bounce ideas off of. Anything somebody says, you can take select quotes and change the narrative, change the whole framing of what they were saying. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just picking out quotes that I felt showed that he still missed the mark, as he said. So here's Drew Brees' apology. I made comments that were insensitive and completely missed the mark on the issues that we're facing right now as a country. They lacked awareness and any type of compassion or empathy. Instead, those words have become divisive and hurtful and have misled people into believing that somehow I am an enemy. He went on to say, I have always been an ally, never an enemy. I am sick about the way my comments were perceived yesterday. So not to give Drew too much, not to keep beating a horse while he's down, but I may have misled people into believing that somehow I am an enemy. Your words, Drew, show that in that moment you are an enemy. Your beliefs, although you can possibly change your beliefs after having them, show that you were not an ally in that moment. You may claim to be an ally. You may think you were being an ally when you knelt, but you missed the point. And although your apology was necessary, I still don't feel that it makes up for what you said. And you were sick about the way your comments were perceived, not about the fact that you said them, not about what they meant, but how they were perceived. Perception is everything, of course, but yes, you mentioned they were hurtful, but it still shows that tone deafness that you mentioned and the ignorance that everybody has said. Your comments were ignorant, because never has this been about the flag. Colin Kaepernick made that clear when he knelt, and we've ever since that moment in 2017. I mistakenly said 2016 a few podcasts back. But ever since that moment in 2017, we have told you guys it's not about the flag. It was never about the military. It was never about the anthem. It's about police brutality that continues to happen. From Rodney King all the way through to George Floyd, and even before Rodney King. Anything you want to say on his apology?
Yeah, the thing that's really kind of getting me is the contradiction, of I made comments that were insensitive and completely missed the mark on the issues we are facing right now as a country. If we were facing them right now as a country, then you would have known that this was an issue, and you wouldn't have had to really you would have been able to say that in your initial interview. That was the same reason why you knelt the first time.
Right. Now, all of a sudden it's we.
And now it's we, when initially it was I will never agree. Because if it was we, you would have said we will never agree. You would have clumped us. But now that it's a problem, it's we. And I have a strong opinion about being an ally. I think that having an ally, the white community being an ally and everybody else being an ally, I think is something we do need. But I also don't believe that during this time we need you to stand beside us. I don't think you need to stand behind us. I think you should stand in front of us. If Tom Brady and Drew Brees and every other, incredibly gifted player in the NFL that is not of black descent were to have stood and said that Colin Kaepernick deserves an apology, Colin Kaepernick did nothing wrong, Colin Kaepernick did this or did that or whatever, he should be in the NFL, I can almost guarantee you he would be in the NFL. But players like this have the privilege to make comments like this and never have to question losing their jobs or anything, aside from Jake Fromm. But
he's not even going to lose his job, I don't think. He didn't have a job to begin with. He's still going to be a backup. But,
right.
So those of you who don't know, Jake Fromm's comments, actually not comments, it was text messages from 2019, but still, although they were private messages, it shows his mindset. He said that his feelings are only elite white people should be able to own guns. And I believe the Second Amendment says the right to bear arms. It doesn't say anything about color.
Right.
So, but I digress. I don't really want to talk about Fromm, really, because he's irrelevant to me.
Same. But it's just a matter of, these players having a platform and using their platform for things that, I think Drew Brees is a phenomenal player, and I think that he has a lot of great messages that he typically spreads on an everyday basis. But this was something, if you didn't have anything nice to say or anything that you felt was going to be conducive to the fight that we are facing right now as a country, you would have said nothing at all.
Amen.
And that is the issue I have with him saying, I have always been an ally and never an enemy, because if you truly were an ally, you would have known your place, or you would have known what to say. So that's all I got to say on Mr. Brees.
I'd have to agree. I think we wrapped that up well. I don't want to beat him up too much, because Drew has since come out and said in a tweet to President 45, that saying that it wasn't about the flag. He's now trying to use his voice to help us, but it was a little bit too late. Too little too late, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Moving forward to another infuriating situation in the NFL. Vic Fangio, the head coach of the Denver Broncos, when asked about racism and discrimination in the NFL, he said, I think our problems in the NFL along those lines are minimal. I don't see racism at all in the NFL. I don't see discrimination in the NFL. If society reflected an NFL team, we'd all be great. I don't want to make the comparison to 45, but he used the word great. So what type of society are you looking for, Vic? If there wasn't discrimination, if there wasn't racism, if the problems were minimal, and I think saying minimal shows that there are indeed those problems in the NFL.
Right.
But if those things didn't exist, the Rooney Rule wouldn't exist. I said this in another podcast, that you shouldn't have to be incentivized for doing what's right. Fangio said that it's a league based off meritocracy, but where are the minority coaches? There are only 4 black coaches and 2 black GMs in the NFL. If it's a league based off meritocracy, you really think that only 2 GMs and 4 head coaches deserve a job in the NFL?
Yeah. Where are the Hispanic coaches? Where are the...
Shout out Ron Rivera and the Washington Redskins.
That is true.
Sorry, the Washington Football Club.
Yeah.
Although I am a Washington fan, I have been dying for them to change the name. In a time like this, with the things that are going on, I think it will be the perfect timing. But Dan Snyder and other elite owners will never do that, unfortunately.
And which also goes back to this point of not seeing racism at all in the NFL.
Good connection.
Like, I don't see how it's not understood that is racist and insensitive, and even having people in that particular, like coming out and saying this is offensive. Like even you have the, like the Kansas City Chiefs and things like that, like it, to me, and it's all over in sports, you have it in baseball. Why is it that it's that hard to change a name? I mean,
I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I'll take your point and expand on it. In baseball, you have the Atlanta Braves, which I don't think names like the Kansas City Chiefs and Atlanta Braves or Florida State Seminoles are offensive. I think names like that bring honor. And also the Cleveland Indians, if I'm wrong, please say anything for people in that community. I apologize if I am offending you. I hope those bring honor, but I think names like the Redskins does not, because that's a derogatory term.
Mm-hmm.
There's people in that community that say that it's offensive, and I've also heard other people say it's not offensive. But if I'll bring it back to Martin Luther King, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if a community feels ostracized by that, if they feel demeaned by that, it's time to do something about that.
Yeah.
Actually, I work for the Redskins, so I won't say anything else. I won't.
Tread lightly, my friend.
Yeah. But I think that's all I wanted to say on his statement to begin with. Anything you want to say on the statement?
Honestly, I don't even really want to give this guy the time of day, to be honest with you. But you can see it all over. I mean, the comparisons have been there from the combine to, of what it looks like. How fast can you run? How high can you jump? How far can you throw the ball? Things like that. It's all based off of, I don't want it to get super political, but, it's all reminiscent of one thing. And I think we all know what that one thing is.
Good are you? How good of a worker are you for me?
Yeah. And, that they don't even make half of what a lot of these owners are making when the owners don't have to risk their bodies for it. So I think that there are a lot of, there's a lot of racism, and like you mentioned about the coaches and the GMs, you shouldn't have to be incentivized to do what's right. Now, if a black GM or a black coach or a Hispanic coach or a Hispanic GM isn't the right person for the job, then so be it. But they should be given the same opportunities as the next man. So Vic Fangio can, or whatever his name is, let's see if he can just make it to the playoffs, to be honest with you.
I think Denver has actually a good chance of making the playoffs, but I digress. There is actually one more thing I wanted to say about his comments. If society reflected an NFL team, we'd all be great. So you're saying if society reflected a system where all ownership is white, the majority of leadership is white, but the majority of employees are black and brown, that we'd all be great. But without beating that too much, I want to move on to his apology, because he did offer a sort of apology. I realize what I said regarding racism and discrimination in the NFL were wrong. I applaud you for that. I should have been more clear, and I am sorry. I wanted to make the point yesterday that there is no color in the locker room.
Oh my goodness.
I'll take a point from your apology. You should have been more clear about that, and you should be more sorry about that. There's no color in the locker room? Come on, Vic. Your apology made it worse. I'll take something from Pastor John Gray. To say that you don't see color is to say that you don't see God's creation for what it is. While we're all born of the same merit, we are different skin color. That would have been a little more powerful if I could see myself doing it, because somehow my video froze. But I know we're still recording. It'll just make it a little bit more difficult to edit this later. But c'est la vie.
Yeah, and I just tweeted something the other day about color. I don't want you to not see color. I want you to see I want you to see color. I want you to see that I'm black. I just don't want to be vilified for being black. And I think a lot of players in the NFL have been, you know, even when it comes to like certain crimes and things like that, you know, as much, you know, as I'm a Steelers fan, and, you know, I defend my boys to the end of the world, Ben Roethlisberger has never had any issue playing a game. He's been suspended. I think he was suspended for a certain case, for a certain rape case, for I think maybe 4 or 5 games. But Ray Rice was pretty much blackballed from the NFL. Colin Kaepernick has been blackballed from the NFL. And obviously that wasn't for a crime, but, you know, they don't get the same opportunity. So yes, I want you to see color in the locker room, but I don't like, let's treat everybody the same. That's all we're asking for is equality. So that man has a lot of learning to do, honestly.
Factual. But after all this happened, the NFL did make a statement through Roger Goodell, and that's the next thing I want to talk about. His statement included a bunch of "we the NFL" phrases, but this one I want to talk about the most. We the NFL admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. Great. Thank you. You were wrong. Thanks for admitting it. Now you encourage us to peacefully protest. But that's what Colin Kaepernick's protest was, a peaceful protest. And a lot has been made about the fact that in his statement, Roger Goodell didn't even mention Colin Kaepernick or any of the players who knelt. Eric Reed didn't even mention any of them. So I still don't think the NFL, not the players. I think the players have done a beautiful job, led by Michael Thomas after Drew Brees' comments, just coming out and saying, we the NFL, we the players of the NFL, this is who we are. We're the same as the George Floyd's, my apologies. George Floyd, Eric Garner, Shannon Sharp made the same mistake earlier. It's just when you get rolling and you have the next thought.
In your head, yeah.
But I think that's really all I wanted to touch on. A lot has been made about the fact that he didn't mention Colin Kaepernick. What do you think about that? Is that a big deal or no?
Yeah. I really just don't know why it's so hard for the NFL to say his name. When I was telling you that, you know, went to one of the protests and things like that, to me, it almost feels the same as Colin Kaepernick almost feels the same as like a George Floyd, or it almost feels the same as a Eric Garner. Because, you know, it's like, say his name. Why is it so hard for people to understand that he did nothing wrong? And I know that's a very thin line for people especially with this George Floyd situation going on, and not making heroes out of certain people. And I don't think the situation is a hero, but I'm going to get off of that because I know that's not what this is about. But I'm just saying that why, like the NFL, we the NFL admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. It is not that hard to say, because really you're only apologizing to one person, because if I'm wrong, Eric Reed has a job. He was still able to play in the NFL.
Every other player that knelt. Sorry, that's the correct verbiage. Every other player that knelt has a job or was able to get another job after that.
Right.
Colin Kaepernick was not.
Exactly. And so the fact that the fact that he isn't employed, and I think at this juncture, I don't even think he wants to be. I think it's just a point that he's trying to prove. But I don't really understand why it's so hard for them to make a formal apology. And I think it would feel so much more genuine for them to say Colin Kaepernick. If they would have started the video by saying, Colin Kaepernick, we the NFL admit we were wrong for not listening to you, as well as several other NFL players earlier, and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. And furthermore, we would like to fully welcome you back to the NFL if you choose to pursue that opportunity. That would have been so much more genuine, and it would have taken steps in the right direction for the NFL. But it truly feels like a lot of people that they are trying to protect their brand from a lot of not players, but fans that had a huge problem with Colin Kaepernick and him kneeling. So it just, to me, the apology doesn't really hold much water at all. Maybe it's just because of everything that's going on in the world now, but it just feels like a PR stunt. I think the players did, like you said, a beautiful job. I believe every single last one of them, and I think that they will kneel continuously this year. But on the NFL's behalf and Roger Goodell, I don't believe it at all until they say his name.
I believe kneeling will come back this season. Adrian Peterson, running back for the Washington Redskins, has already said that he will kneel, and I believe other players will follow suit. One last thing I wanted to say on that. I'm not sure, after all the legality that happened with the situation, I'm not sure if they are able to say Colin Kaepernick's name. But actually they are, because Colin Kaepernick had a whole workout, so
yeah.
Let me nix that idea. I heard that running around too, but let's nix that. Moving on to some UFC. Did you watch UFC 250?
I saw at the tail end. I don't know if it was 250, but was it Amanda Nunes fought? Was that 250? Yeah, I did watch part of that fight, but I didn't watch anything before that. But I did hear about what you're going to talk about.
All right. I'm going to preface this with saying I didn't watch it either. I thought about buying it for the main event, which was Nunes versus Amanda Spencer. Sorry, Nunes versus Spencer. Amanda's Nunes' first name. But yeah, immediately following UFC 250, Connor McGregor on Twitter announced that he is retiring from fighting, saying that the game just does not excite me, and that's that. Pretty straight to the point.
Yeah.
He did say fighting instead of mixed martial arts or MMA, so I wonder what that means. There was a proposed fight, a rematch between McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. So I wonder what his retirement means for that, if anything. But yeah, we'll get straight to the point. This isn't the first time that Connor has retired. He previously retired in 2016 and once again in 2019, but both times he returned to fight. The first time in 2016, he returned the same year to fight for the Diaz rematch. And in 2019, he retired and then rejoined at the beginning of this year in January to fight Cowboy Cerrone. There we go. I don't have that written down. It's right up here. And knocked him out in 40 seconds. So,
Yeah. Cowboy didn't stand a chance in that fight.
Indeed. What do you make of his retirement announcement? Do you think it's legit, or what's up?
I think it's a gray area. I think for the most part it is legit. I mean, Proper 12 has done well. At least, I've been out a few places and have seen people buying Proper 12. So I think he's realizing that he can make legit money, and I think he's an entertaining dude. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get like some form of a reality show or some form of show on Showtime or HBO or whatever. But I think it's all about the money, really.
That is the next point I was going to make. Is it all about the money? Other stars in the UFC have recently threatened retirement or threatened vacating their title belt. In the case of John Jones, seeking higher payouts from the UFC and Dana White specifically. John Jones and Jorge Masvidal have both threatened to retire over money. So is it the same thing with Connor? I know he just said that it doesn't excite him anymore, but he also happened to say that he doesn't know if it's the lack of fans in the arenas right now with the pandemic going on, or the time that's going on between fights, like Khabib Namur. I'm not going to butcher your last name.
Yeah.
Wow, for somebody aspiring to be a sports anchor, I really have some work to do. But that's what this is all about.
I wouldn't stress yourself out too much. That is one heck of a last name.
I appreciate you, brother. But Khabib's fight has been pushed back to September. It's one of the things that Connor mentioned with one of the reasons that things just might not be exciting anymore. So it could be that. But Dana White also had another viewpoint. He said that these are crazy times we're living in. And indeed they are, with the pandemic going on, with cities burning and rioting happening.
Mm-hmm.
These are indeed crazy times. So he said that obviously stars and other fighters can do what they want at this time. He encourages them to retire, and they're always welcome to come back.
Yeah, for me, I just think that like the game just doesn't excite me. I really don't think there's many people in UFC that know how to hype a fight like Connor. So I think if we do get if Floyd really is serious about coming back, because he's one to retire and come back as well, I think Connor would take that fight in a flash, because the promo for that fight was incredible. You could tell that they genuinely respected each other in terms of their how they go about promoting the fight, and they both had huge payouts. So I think for Connor McGregor, I can see why the game wouldn't be exciting for him anymore, especially with everything that's going on in the world. But I really think that it's a money thing. That he's making legit money. Not that he wasn't making legit money, but he's making real money without having to risk his body out of the octagon. So if he can make, that money, why not make it? But I think if Floyd Mayweather comes knocking at his door, there's no way he doesn't open it up.
Agreed. I think the last thing I want to say on this, forgot the last thing I wanted to say. Wow, Carl, where is your mind going today? So I'll just say this. Jorge Masvidal proposed a situation that might help with payment issues in the UFC. He said that he should get 50% of the pay-per-view, and I think that's a pretty good proposal. He went on to mention that he doesn't profit any from the ticket sales. He doesn't profit any from the hot dog that's vended in the concessions. he profits off of his namesake, the fact that he goes in the octagon and gets punched in the face professionally. So the people who are tuning in to watch the fight, he should get 50% of that. And it shouldn't be contract fights. I know the last contract he signed was for 7 fights, and he's saying he thinks that could be a direction that they go, where stars at least get the payout from their pay-per-view. And yeah,
it actually would make sense, because I mean, you got to think, like, people like Connor, they're a brand. I think for the lower tier fighters, the ones that are still trying to make a name for themselves, I think your traditional contracts and your purses, I think, should stay the same. But the more you grow and the more your brand grows, the more, if you're a main event, people are talking about that in barbershops. People are talking about that on the streets. People are talking about that all over the place. So I think those same people should be able to reap the benefits of that. Nobody's talking about, when you mention UFC, you don't say, oh, well, you're watching UFC 250. You're saying, are you watching the Connor McGregor such and such fight?
Facts.
So they give the UFC validity, and vice versa. But I think it's got to be some form of a partnership where it's not just people, it's not, I had the thought in my head and it's fleeted from me. But yeah, I think you got to grow. As the business grows, you have to allow them to grow. And I think not allowing them to grow, and especially financially, I think it pushes away great fighters like Conor McGregor from the game. Because not only, getting punched in the face is not exciting. I don't care how many people, that do this professionally, nobody wants to wake up and say, hey, like today, I'm going to get knocked out in 40 seconds. I'm going to black out. I'm going to have to go to the hospital and things like that. I'm going to get cauliflower ear and everything like that. People aren't waking up and saying that, but the money gives them the incentive and the reason to go in and doing it. So if the money isn't matching the punishment, of course it's not going to excite them.
Very true. And that actually reminded me of the point I was trying to make last time.
Love when that happens.
Same. But as you mentioned, people don't say UFC 250. They say the Conor McGregor fight. So with that being said, and these stars threatening to retire, I agree. It's not exciting, especially with the wait times between every fight, especially the main fights. Not to knock Nunes, who is definitely doing her thing, undefeated, the most winning female fighter in UFC history. Not saying that wasn't exciting, but yeah, it's time to consider some of these stars' points and try to make the game more exciting. So instead of ignoring and belittling people like John Jones and Masvidal and McGregor, I'm calling you out, Dana. It's time to listen to them, and those are the fighters we want to watch. So do more to appease them, for lack of a better word.
That's a great button on everything we just talked about.
Uh-huh.
Listen to the people.
Amen. And for Carl McManus and
Brandon Hughley,
that has been What's the Word. God bless.